In this second video, we're going to look at problem number 6, 7, 8, and 9. So if we look at number 6, we have x minus 2, and we know that in parentheses with the x, we know we add 2. So all of the x values on our graph, we're going to add 2. So if I look at this point and take the x value and add 2, that means I'm going to go right 2, which means that point's going to move to here. And then if I take this x-intercept and I move that 2, I'm going to move 1, 2, and I'm going to be over on this side of the y-axis. And then if I take the actual y-intercept and move it 2, I'm going to say the same height but move it over 2, so I'm going to end up over here. Well, if I take this high point here, I move it 2, it's going to end up over here. And then I can just draw my curve. And then let's look and see which one it matches up with. So I'm going to look at a point here where we're on the x and y axis, we're close to the origin. And I'm going to look over here at 4, I'm about 2. So I'm going to look at that as well. And let's look down here. And I look and see that I have a graph here that I'm close to the x and y axis, and at 4 my y value is 2. And then I can look and see that up here at 2, 1 I have a point, and then also here at 2, 1 I have a point. So I'm going to say that number 6 is letter A. Looking at number 7, we're going to flip, stretch, move. So what we're going to start out with is a flip. And so we look at this negative f of x, and f of x we know is y. So all the y values are going to change sign. So what was negative is now positive, what was positive is now negative. So I'm going to take this point down here and move it up here. And my x-intercepts stay where they are because a negative 0 is still the same. And if I have a 1 on the y-axis, then I'm going to flip it down to negative 1. And at 2, I'm almost to 2, and I'm going to flip that down to the bottom. And then I also have an x-intercept here. That makes it so that 0 being negative is 0. So if I flip it, this is what my graph would look like. So now we have to do the second piece, which is x over 2. And we know that if a number was with x, it's the opposite. So what was divided by 2 is now times 2. So we're going to multiply everything times 2 as far as x goes. So anywhere there's an x, I'm going to double it. So here at negative 1.5 at my x-intercept, doubled makes 3. And then if I double 0, an x value of 0, it stays the same. So that point on my y-axis stays the same. And if I take my value here, my lowest point now, on that curve, and double it, we had an x of 2, now it's 4. So we're going to move that over here. And then we're going to connect them. So I'm going to connect these points together. And I'm going to look at the bottom for an x-intercept of negative 3. I'm going to look at the y-intercept of negative 1. And then over here at 4, I'm going to look at almost negative 2. So that's what I'm going to look at in the graphs. So the top 3, none of them are upside down. And the next 3, there is 1, letter E is upside down. So let's take a look. We have a point here that's an x-intercept of negative 3. We cross at a y-intercept of negative 1. And then over at 4, we're almost negative 2. So I'm going to say letter E is our graph. Number 8, we flip, stretch, move. So in this case, we're going to flip first, and the flip has to do with the x value. So anything that's x is going to change signs. So on this side, I have positive almost 5, which is going to flip over to this side. And then I know that the y-intercept always stays the same because of negative 0 is 0. And I have a point up here at 2, almost 2, so I'm going to move that over on the other side. And then I have this point at a negative 3, so I'm going to flip that over to a positive 5, negative 3. Basically, we're going to curve the other way. So we flipped it. We don't have a stretch, but we do have a move. So plus 2. So this is really, f of x is really y, so y plus 2. So every value of y is going to move up 2. So on this side, we're going to move up 2. And for our x-intercept, we're going to move that up 2. And for our y-intercept, we're going to move that up 2. And back here at negative 2, we're going to move that up 2 as well. And then our x-intercept over here near negative 5, we're going to move that up 2 as well. So now we have a graph that looks like this. And we're going to look at some key features. So a little over 3.5-ish. We're going to look for that y-intercept. We're going to look somewhere over here about 4. We're going to have an x-intercept. And then I'm going to look at negative 2, almost 4 for that other third point. So I go down to the bottom. I look and see, okay, the first 3 don't look like they're backwards. And if I look at the next 2, DE, those don't look backwards either. If I look at F looks like it goes down a little bit too much, too fast. Now if I look at letter I, I've got my y-intercept up here, 3-ish. My highest point there is almost 4. And then over here at almost 4 is my x-intercept. So I'm going to say that number 8 is letter I. Our last problem is number 9, and we're going to go with flip, stretch, move. And we don't have a flip. There's not a negative in front of the f of x or inside with the x. But there is a stretch. So the stretch is 2. And then we know f of x is a y. So we're going to double the y values. So that's the first thing we're going to do. So we're going to take double y value over here at the x-intercept stays the same. If I take this top of the curve and double it, then I'm going to go up to 3.5-ish. And then if I take a y-intercept of 1 and double it, I'm at 2. And if I double an x-intercept y value of 0, it stays the same. And then if I take this last point, which is a little over 3, and double it, I'm going to go back down here to about 6. So I'm going to look at connecting those points together so it gets kind of high. And then my next step would be to take and subtract 2 from every y value. So if I take my x-intercept here and subtract 2, now I'm down here. If I take my y-intercept and move it down, I'm at 0, 0. If I take my top of my arc and move it down, I'm down here. And then if I take my x-intercept on this side and move it down, I'm over here. So I'm going to take that curve and move it down. And then what I'm going to look for is 0, 0 is where I cross. And then I'm going to look at my top of my curve is about 2. And then if I look at my well, it used to be my x-intercept moved down to 2. So I'm going to look for those points down at the bottom, which means I'll look over here at D, and I have 0, 0. I have it 2, I'm close to 2, and then over on this side, my x-intercept moved down to a -2. So I'm going to say that this last one is letter D.